It's 12.
Hello?
Hello. It's 12:20. I think all of you are hungry. So essentially, what we're going to do is we're going to try to make this light and fun. The idea is we're trying to discuss something which has been discussed in the past day already. It's about e-commerce, but this time we're going to deal with social media. So you've heard words like social commerce as a new buzzword, wherein you merge social media with e-commerce. What we have here is a panel of distinguished experts in the e-commerce and social media fields, and we'd like to utilize their insights on trying to determine which are the myths and which are the realities of social media and e-commerce. So I guess you've already heard a lot from Oliver, and essentially what I wanted to begin with is a question on AVA.PH. In e-commerce has been in the Philippines for the past more than 15 years, and it has evolved. And one of the leading, or maybe a young and new concept that's being brought up is what we see in AVA. So the question is, given all these millions of e-commerce players in the Philippines and global and worldwide, what makes AVA different? And what do you do to make it more distinct from everyone else offering services or goods online? So yeah. Hello. Yeah.
Hello. Okay.
Better.
So the question is what makes AVA different?
Yes.
Is that a question in general or specific to social media and
Actually,
Facebook, or?
In general, and then tie it towards social media.
Okay. Well, as I mentioned yesterday, our core purpose is to help design and fashion brands have an online footprint. And we think it's a big problem that a lot of young brands are facing. And we think there's growing demand for products and brands like these. And what we try to do very, very differently is really curate. We only feature products that our team loves. We try to make their choices so much easier online with a good set of products and a very awesome user experience. On the social media front, we've experimented with a number of things, and it really goes back to where you see social media in the customer purchase funnel. Is it at the top of the funnel for generating awareness, or is it at the end of the funnel for closing a sale? And we did a number of experiments on that. Number one, we actually had a Facebook store pretty early on in our existence, where you could actually buy stuff through an app that was connected on the tab of our Facebook page. One of our earlier iterations into social commerce. We killed that after a month when the conversions were not meeting our expectations.
Let me interrupt. So you killed it because it wasn't working, or because it wasn't fit for your particular business?
Because it wasn't working. We saw that people were not necessarily buying on the Facebook page. They were going to the site itself. And it's not inconsistent with what a lot of the sites in the States have done. I think Nordstrom's and Macy's for a while had their own Facebook stores, but eventually killed them. And I think the underlying psychological reason for consumers is that if you're on Facebook, you're like in a bar, talking with friends, chatting, networking, and all that stuff. And you don't want somebody coming up to you while you're having a drink trying to sell you stuff.
So this is actually crucial. Before I entered the panel, I was under the impression that Facebook, being so prevalent in the Philippines, would be a very good media or channel to support e-commerce.
It is. That's why I started with my whole analogy on the consumer funnel. And what we discovered was that Facebook was obviously pretty great for generating awareness and generating initial traction and initial demand. So much so that anywhere from 30 to 50% of our referral traffic now comes from Facebook. But its role is there. It's to generate demand. It's to tell people about the brand, to create awareness. But it's not going to be there to close the sale for you. And I can dig deeper into the numbers later on if you guys want, on what % of conversions specifically come from Facebook.
But that's a good point. Essentially, it drives traffic. It brings people. It informs them. but it doesn't necessarily sell. I guess that's what we gather. Actually, on that point, our friend Richard actually has a different view because I did a quick research on Lenddo. Lenddo actually is it deals with loans. Now, but the interesting thing about their loans is that they do it online. Realize loans in the Philippines is actually a very quite risky proposition, whether you're a bank or a non-bank. But the idea here is that if you're doing it online, and it becomes even more difficult. So my question is, how do you make it work? How does this work?
So I think there were three things. I've had the pleasure of living in the Philippines since 2001, and I've actually been in the outsourcing industry since then. So seeing the growth of this emerging middle class, and I think the first thing I noticed is the middle class are growing, and it's made up of a lot of very well-educated, very hardworking, very trustworthy people. The second thing that we all know is they're all online and they're all very social. But the third thing that I found and was amazed by is these people can't get credit for sometimes very life-improving purposes. So I was kind of saying, why? You know, you have someone who went to one of the top universities, he works really hard. Some of the people that were working for me previously were reconciling trades for New York-based hedge funds and dealing with hundreds of thousands of dollars. But if someone in their family needed a loan for an emergency, they weren't able to get one from the bank. The bank would say, come back in a week's time, I'll review you. Give me a big page of documents. And it didn't help them. So we felt that there was an opportunity amongst those three areas to do something different. So we took the approach of a lot of the microfinances work very well in the Philippines, using the bottom of the pyramid in a very physical type of environment. We felt that social media could mimic that. And by connecting social media, we knew who people were connected to and link their behaviors together to basically give them a credit worthiness score. And we've done that over the last year and a half. We allow them to join. They can get free financial education, which we think is critical. And the majority of these people in the middle class have no financial education. Over 80% have never had it. Secondly, when they connect their social media accounts, we give them a credit score. These people have never been given a score before. They don't understand what the purpose is. And a lot of the time we found that the way they think is tomorrow, mañana. They don't think about the long term. So one of the purposes of having a credit score, and any American around the room would know, is that you don't want to reduce your FICO score, your credit score, because it's going to cost you in the future. We have to educate people here about that. You know, what you do today will affect your future. And then thirdly, give them access to financial services. And we've actually mapped out through our data scientists a number of key factors. We take 70 different variables and then we run different models to create that score. And we've found that our default rates are very, very low.
Well, that's actually in contrast with Oliver's experience. Oliver's experience is that social media helps. It's not that critical. It helps, but it's not exactly the business. What I'm hearing from you is it is the business in terms of you need it to do the score. Without it, you cannot determine the creditworthiness of an individual. Is that correct?
That's correct. But the way we started, I mean, from the front-end platform, it's a website. We did not put an app on Facebook. We drive traffic through Facebook, and that's very important, exactly like Oliver was saying. But we also found the same thing. I think that's changing now. As more people get access online through phones and your sites have to be prepared to move in that direction. One of the big assumptions would people be prepared to connect a social media account if they need one? And we've overwhelmingly said yes now, and over 50% of people give us that immediately.
So essentially, for AVA and for Lenddo, social media has relevance. It actually works for certain aspects of the business. But the question now is, how effective is it? Well, have you really figured out how much it affects your bottom line? Or granted, there is traffic, is it really a conversion issue? Maria actually is in the business of measuring. And essentially, that's where we'd like to ask, is there a way we can really measure if whatever they are doing actually works in the big picture? Or does it really generate enough traffic or enough conversions or enough credit scores to make it viable to invest in it?
That is can you hear me? All right. That's a very good question. Now, as Oliver mentioned earlier, that really boils down to what your objectives are. Now, is Facebook or other social media destinations, because mind you, not everything social, especially in the Philippine space, is Facebook. That's part of the myth actually, that's part of the misnomer that when you think of social, you think of Facebook. Yes, it is number one, and from the way we see it as the audience measurement facility in the country, they do about, from a volume perspective, they do about a little over 50% of the volume of social conversation. But the rest of it actually is a lot of micro-social, visual social that's happening. In fact, Multiply is still considered a social platform at number 3 after Twitter. So there are a lot more destinations out there. It is not just about Facebook. So having said that, whether it's, as Oliver said, it depends where you expect to be discovered by your target consumer on their customer journey, on that purchase funnel. So in AVA's case, the point was not to create the transaction or the action point on Facebook, but rather on their own media. Okay? So Facebook and search and all these other points of discovery are part of their attribution model. In Lendo's case, it's part of a profiling capacity, which we can also supplement them with to tell Lenddo or clients like Lenddo, for example, where else can they find that profile of a client. So that's kind of what we do. We are the audience profiling and measuring capacity of the industry.
Okay.
Just one other comment. I think the big difference that digital commerce companies have is they can track this, which is very difficult for a lot of brick and mortar companies. So I think everyone who has a store or is involved in it, you can track the numbers, you can see what works, what you can't. Do you change it? Do you stop it? Do you start it? And that's just the only other point I would have.
So maybe the question is e-commerce really social? Does it have to be social? Or can we just let e-commerce be as it is and use social in whatever way that could help? Maybe you could give us an insight on that.
I think it's inherently social because given our target market, women, 20s and their 30s, they will talk about their purchases. They will talk about the brands that they love and show them off to their friends. So I think it's inherently social. Since Richard brought up the idea of tracking and measuring, the way we look at it is between paid and organic. The great thing about Facebook is it allows you to target a really, really specific audience, generate awareness and demand out of that for a fraction of the cost of going to TV or going to print. So for instance, at AVA, if the global average for click-through rates on Facebook ads is 0.04%, we were able to achieve a really great click-through rate of 8% on specific ads because we were able to do really, really precise targeting with the right content. On the organic front, which is just seeing whether our Facebook posts lead to any purchases, I would say around 25% of our conversions are assisted by Facebook. And when I say assisted, it's not the only element in the funnel. The consumer will have to interact directly on the site or look at our newsletter. And at the same time, look at the content that's coming in on Facebook. And around 25% of our transactions are assisted by that interaction with a Facebook post.
So for everybody in the floor, they're actually thinking, some of them are interested in becoming an e-commerce player, or maybe some already are. Maybe the next question is, should I evolve my e-commerce platform to become more focused on the social aspects? Should I enable it with more Facebook traffic? Should I measure it well? These are the things that are happening or are in their minds right now. Maybe you could give us an insight on the relevance of doing social media for your businesses in as far as the people in the audience are concerned. Yes. Yeah.
So let us take maybe an example that we have. So one of the things we want to do is we measure two things, and we measure this every day by channel. Yeah, the first is engagement. Yeah, and there are industry standards of how you measure the engagement of your platform. Yeah, I mean that's something you can do, and that's definitely something that then turns into virality. and that makes it cheaper to grow your business. So I think these are the types of things you have to think. You know, most people, we have a double bottom line because we have a social impact investor, but even if you just have one, you know, you need to make money. So it's how do you acquire the customers, what's the lifetime value of the customers, and then what is your strategy of social to fit into that mix to maximize your returns. So I think it's very important. It's going to be different by different business, but it's an element that is critical to think about at the outset nowadays.
Maria, actually, follow on to that. I understand that your business deals a lot with measurement, and it works well with enterprises. The question is, how does it apply to individual e-commerce providers or small and medium businesses that are also into the space?
Well, before we actually go into that, and yes, we actually do that, but before we go into that, I just want to emphasize. Dave Condon mentioned earlier during the presentation that that there is this positive notion of the online consumer, the Philippine online consumer in general. As much as the media will highlight the negatives and fraud and all that, but from the study that we created in partnership with DCOM, there's this good positive sentiment out there for online consumers. Now, we might not have the biggest or the largest shares of pocket. We might not have the largest spends. But apparently, as a Filipino online consumer, we're very deliberate and we're very curious. So the way we use social mechanisms like Facebook or Twitter or Multiply, it has to be part of that, as mentioned earlier, that consumer journey. So do you want to use social as a discovery point or as the transaction point, or put it this way, because sometimes we end up taking that sort of consideration from a product perspective as to what we want to push out into the market, and sometimes we just need to reverse that perspective, and this is what we help the industry do. We give the perspective of the consumer, of the audience. Where does the audience go to? For example, if you want to speak to women 24 to 40 of an earning capacity of $500 a month to $2,000 a month, located in the National Capital Region, you want to see how big of an addressable market you have, what sites they go to, when they are interested in finance decisions, for example, or grocery buying decisions, what sites do they go to, and what is their customer journey? Turns out, after they go to an authority site, let's say on personal finance and advice, for example, they don't stop there. And sometimes this is one of the misconceptions or the myths that we think that we are always the last mile for the consumer. No, the online Filipino consumer is very deliberate. They will take a piece of authority content and they will bring it back to their social mechanisms, whether it's Facebook, whether it's old school social like forums, and yes, those are still very vibrant. They take that to their peers and ask for peer referrals. What do their friends think about it? What do their families think about it? Because yes, friends and families are still the #1 influencer when it comes to decisions like that, especially for online commerce. So knowing that this is the attitude and this is the behavior of consumers that they tell us, because our data is monitored from an intrinsic, organic, day-to-day behavioral perspective, and it's audience bias, not product push bias, that tells us exactly, the consumers themselves tell us where they want you to find them on that consumer journey.
Actually, you bring up a good point. So essentially, this e-commerce exercise, everybody looks for information on the web, but they still validate through other people, whether through social media or through face-to-face. They validate,
yes.
And that's, I guess, the critical item. So, that being said, what are the issues that we face whenever we have to marry social and e-commerce? And I guess you already encountered a lot of these issues. Would you care to share some key learnings that you had with respect to marrying it? What were the pitfalls? What were the limitations? And what did you do to avoid them or to overcome them?
That's a great question, one that we always worry about every day. The biggest barrier that we face here as a client company is the lack of quality social media providers. And I think this is probably a good forum to address that. I'm sorry to interrupt your lunches, but can I get a show of hands of who are the agencies in the room? Digital agencies. Who are the digital agencies here? Nobody? No digital agencies?
Anyone from Zenith, Group M, the larger media buying agencies? There, we've got some.
Anyone from the client side, running a brands?
Brands.
Wala tayong brands. This is very unfortunate.
Okay, so the biggest
Very good, thank you.
The biggest pain point we've faced on AVA is it's very hard to find people who know the complete cycle in terms of generating awesome content, launching and executing awesome campaigns, and that involves execution, delivery, media buying, and tying all that up together on the analytics front. Knowing how to measure viral coefficients, optimizing, doing A/B testing. I've interviewed a good number of so-called digital marketing providers, and one of the classic questions I ask is, how do you decide whether to pick CPC or CPM for a campaign? Of course, the answer is the conversion rates and what the indifference point is, but it's hard to find people who are really versed in that language. I haven't seen any of the major agencies selling A/B testing and optimization tactics to their clients, and I think it's the function of the big brands just spend money, will waste 1.5 million pesos on a Facebook app when it will only cost less than 200,000 pesos to create it. I don't think Wildfire or Buddy Media or Nanigans have any good presence here in the Philippines. And so I think those are one of the big opportunities, because a lot of the Facebook social media spending here is still on single-serve platforms as opposed to multi-serve demand-side platforms. So I think that's a big innovation that can happen in the pipeline.
Richard, did you encounter anything of the nature as well of limitations or pitfalls of marrying social media, especially in your business?
Yeah, I think social for everyone is going to play an increasingly important factor, and that creates a huge opportunity, not only to grow businesses quicker and grow them cheaper, but it also poses massive threats. Because whereas before, someone who loves your product might speak to a few people about it, they now can share it on their Facebook page or through their other social media, and they might hit 350, 400 people with that. And you hear the stories of this all the time. On the flip side, if something's wrong, they will also share it with 300, 400, and it may just go viral. So I think great opportunity, but also it's a threat to businesses as they mirror social with their business plans.
Yeah. So I guess the answer is, social is good, let's use it, but use it with caution. Or use it with the right experts, so to speak. With that,
use it with the right objective
right
first.
objectives as well. And essentially, you have to measure if they actually work. Have you ever tried measuring ROI on your investment for social media? Or you just took it as it's a good ROI somewhere?
Everything. Every day, every channel, every ad, everything is reviewed. We have stats every day. We try everything. And we put caps on certain limits, and then we see, is it working? And if we will drop it, if it goes below a certain amount. If it hits another limit, we will increase that spend. So this is a fundamental behind what we actually do.
It's a daily thing. It's part
Correct.
of the operations.
Correct.
At this point, I'd like to ask, are there any questions on the floor so that we could already address them? Yes, please.
Hi, this is Jose again from Prudential Financial. I'm just wondering, okay, how true is this statement? Every day that your business does not have a Facebook page is another day that your business is not maximizing its appeal. Because when I think about putting up a Facebook page, let's say for hypothetical company A, all right? Now, you run a great reputation risk there. There are some people out there, just because they don't have anything better to do, okay, they're gonna put negative comments on your Facebook page, and you gotta police that 24 hours. Policing it costs money, okay? So if you're a business that, say, you have a limited budget, you can't afford someone to monitor it 24 hours yet, but you are losing the opportunity in reaching out to more people through Facebook. So how do you deal with that?
Well, I think it really depends on the business model. You mentioned that you're in financial services.
Yeah.
So I think the opportunity is it's an inherently opaque industry for ordinary consumers. So some content could be helpful for them. And you're right that you totally have to police it every day. But again, going back to the earlier point on what your objectives are, if part of your business objectives is to educate people on financial products out there, I think social is a good avenue. It's not the only avenue, but I think it's definitely one of the good avenues to pursue.
Also, when it comes to guidelines and parameters for handling social communications, if making sure that that keeping that brand equity solid and positive is really a point for, let's say, you as a corporate brand. Your corporate communications guys usually have a set of guidelines which usually works well, and it's a good benchmark for social as a starting point. From there, if Corpcom can't handle it, usually when you have agencies, your media agency or even your creative or brand agency usually has that capacity already. So that sort of cost can be, you can discover points where you can have that cost and that that channel measured and I wouldn't say policed, but at least managed well. Because at the end of the day, as you mentioned, if the consumer's already there, whether or not we choose to interact with them, they're already there, and we need to make sure that our brand equity is protected by that interaction.
Richard, do you have something to add?
My only comment would, it's a challenge because I think social media is one of the few things where it's multidisciplinary. So you've got marketing teams, sales teams, PR teams, Corpcom, all might need to be involved with dealing with Facebook. So I think that's one challenge you'll face, which you have to come if you're a bigger company. If you're smaller, it's slightly easier. Second, I think just having a Facebook page is not the challenge. The challenge is what is the content you need to provide, what does the market want, and how do you keep engaged with your market? And I think that's the second point behind that.
All right.
Did that answer your question, sir? Is that all
You
right?
have something else to add?
All right. Before we have your second question, I just wanted to add actually to Oliver's point, where he didn't feel that he saw enough professional or agency or trade capacity for performance marketing. There actually is, and yes, Buddy Media is here, but there's actually a lot.
Link them over.
oh, hello. Okay. There's actually a lot. We know that Group M has an attribution modeling facility. I know Mindshare has. ZO has a dedicated analytics and measurement capacity, Zenith Optimedia, and these are the big guys, right? But the small guys, you've got, well, Dave here, Axon, we've got Hot Air Balloon. There are a lot of guys out there, and well, actually with our French folk, the Net Booster, now Movement guys are really known for performance marketing. So when it comes to attribution modeling, you can, depends on where you are in your company life cycle, for example, but there are ways that you can approach, ROI for measurement of social networks and search and all that from a very, cost-efficient capacity.
Question.
Hi, I'm Joe Rouse, visiting from Singapore. I'm with Get to Volume, an early-stage investor. I just wanted to better understand, because I'm learning about the Philippines. Back to the digital agency question you were touching on. Is it quality, is it price, or a combination of the two? Because I think that's something we encounter in Singapore as well, so it's not unusual. I just wanted to better understand the dilemma for businesses.
For us, it's a combination of both. Because coming from a startup standpoint, of course, the focus on ROI is intense. And my former life was in P&G, so we were used to the big budgets and the old school advertising model, which has huge retainers, huge ASFs, and we see that model obviously not working for a startup like us. So to reduce the pain point, we ended up just building the capabilities in-house, or at least we're trying to build it in-house because all of the content is online. People can totally learn it, and we build the software around it. But I think there's still a huge opportunity for a lot of these capabilities to trickle down for startups specifically, and not for the big brands.
The gentleman from Prudential had a second question, actually.
Please. Do you have a second question?
Maybe you should go ahead.
Okay, we actually have text-in questions. They will be flashed on the screen. Is SNS really beneficial to B2B companies, considering that they have different decision-making process compared to consumer goods? If yes, in what way? Kindly cite B2B companies who utilize the SNS and their best practices. Did you get that? Okay. Social networks. Is social media really beneficial to B2B? That's the first question. And if yes, in what way? And then, do you know of any B2B companies that utilize social media and their best practices? I think they want to build, the question is gearing towards B2B as against B2C. We've already discussed B2C extensively. Maybe the question, will it also work for B2B industries or B2B entities? Maybe you have an answer, Maria.
To some extent, yes. It really depends on what the B2B company wants to achieve. A lot of them have, what I can see from corporate brands is a lot of CSR mechanisms on social to kind of build that. But if it's really B2B or trade, there still is. But that really boils down, again, a consumer is a consumer, a target market is a target market, regardless of whether it's a customer, a retail customer, or a partner, a business partner. At the end of the day, it boils down to profiling, where you think you can find these partners for a B2B sort of transaction.
Yeah. Well, I think LinkedIn is definitely a pretty good platform for that. I see a good number of BPOs on Facebook, but they use it for recruitment. So it's a B2B industry, but it fulfills a B2C function on Facebook. So I would say, LinkedIn, with all of its capabilities in recruitment and building the corporate brand, I think would be a good option.
Yeah, and I guess inherently, the reason why it's called social media, it's because it's more into consumers or end users. So if you deal with B2B, normally it's still the consumer aspect of the B2B business that's actually involved with the social media. Any other question? Yes, please.
Hello. I think this could be the last question just so that we can break for lunch. And these poor panelists, I think, are a little bit hungry, yes? Okay,
Yeah.
thank you very much for that.
So hi, I'm Jesse from Data One. I'm also a B2B company. So I have exactly the same question. And I've been pondering about it. Yes, it may be LinkedIn. I followed a lot of companies on LinkedIn. I've never read a single post from them because they're either long articles or it doesn't interest me. My question is there actually a measurement of how many people really find really click on these links or these posts?
I guess the question really is, how do we measure the effectivity of these
or
particular
the LinkedIn posts? Yeah.
Yes, particularly for B2B, or is it for anybody in general?
B2B, well, whatever figure you have.
Please.
There is actually. There is. Well, if it's particular to LinkedIn, then it's part of certain premium services. But if you link that to a certain piece of content that you might want to tag with us, for example, or any other measurement tool as a third-party measurement tool, you will get that capacity. And not just a matter of how many clicks or how many impressions or how many page views, but rather, and more importantly, whether it's the relevant target market that's clicking on your content. So if you think of it like that and make sure that the content assets that you put out into the market, whether it's paid media or earned media or owned media, if you plan that right and anticipate that by tagging that with a third-party measurement facility, you will get your visibility of the actual of the audience, of the who, rather than just the what.
Right. Okay. Thanks.
So at this point, I'd like to ask you any parting words. Maybe, Richard, you could invite them to get a loan or something.
No, I think more generally, great opportunity. Philippines, there's bubbling at the moment. I think it's a great opportunity for digital commerce. It's going to grow. Just plan it out correctly, and it's going to be a huge success for all of you in the room.
Maria.
You actually, to answer one of your questions earlier about, measurement being perceived to be this game of medyo mahal siya. It's not supposed to be very affordable for the little guy. That is one of the myths. That is one of the misnomers. Now, most research and most online measurement capacities are based on large licensing fees that are, orientated towards, let's say, a US sort of market or a European sort of, price point. That is not the case. instead of licensing for, if a license costs a couple of $1,000s for a big company and it still costs exactly the same couple of $1,000s for a small company, of course the small company will think that they will have to dispense with it, which should not be the case. I will put this out to everyone actually who is involved in e-commerce and either is starting their own site or has a payment mechanism or a product to sell. I will put it this way. We will tag all your sites. Effective Measure will tag all your sites for free now, just to give you the visibility of the type of audiences that you have right now. That is the challenge that we're going to give DCOM. That is the support we're going to give DCOM.
For those of you who didn't get that, you're getting something free. Yeah, so essentially...
Free measurement. Give me your card.
Here's the thing.
Very good question. Google Analytics, by the way, tells you what is happening on your site, how many impressions, how many page views. We tell you who and then where else they're going, okay? We don't give you first name, last name, email address. That's not what we do. What we do is give you behavioral profiles. And we will challenge this and we will provide this community with at least the basic functions, age, gender, where else they go, household income, all the basic stuff. And then, if you feel you have an earning capacity and an earning viability, based on the data that the measurement will provide you, then you can tell us, no, you know what, I want to learn more about how much mobile traffic I'm doing, how much of that is coming from a specific demographic. Then you can just upgrade as you need to. All right, so it's in parallel. The growth is in parallel with your business. Okay.
So for those of you who are interested to get the free stuff, approach Maria, and actually it's good stuff. We've seen the reports. The reports are actually very accurate and very extensive. And if it's going to be offered to you for free, you'd better be excited about it. And finally, we have Oliver.
Including the both of them, by the way.
Just two things. The first one is Maria preempted me. I also want to give a free gift to the ladies
wait.
in the audience.
Another free gift. Attention, please.
To the ladies in the audience, because it's a social media panel, just follow us on Twitter, AVA.PH. That's AVA.PHILS. We'll be tweeting a free gift for the ladies in the audience later this afternoon. So just check it out and hope to see you on the site. And then number two, as I alluded to a while ago, we're always hiring. We're continuously on the lookout for great talent or great partners. So if any one of you guys are, as individuals or as companies, are in the digital marketing space, social media, if you're excited by the intersection of design, branding, and I'm around the whole afternoon. I'll be happy to chat. Thanks.
With that, we thank you all for joining us, and we hope you enjoyed the rest of the day with the DCOM Summit.
Thank you very much to this panel.